Welcome, everybody, to the pilot episode of the Philosopher King podcast. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. What a somber day. I was not expecting, obviously, most, if not all of you, have heard already about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's quite unexpected and very sobering. So I obviously had some things I wanted to talk to you guys about, and we will. I kind of want to start out. I see there's a number of you here already. I want to start out just with a moment of silence for Charlie because, like him or not, I mean, I personally disagreed with him on a lot, agreed with him on a lot of other things. We all have our own opinions about things. As you guys all know, you've heard us at the Phone Booth podcast. We all have a great variety of beliefs and understandings of various topics. And one of the beautiful things about being a human being in this world is we form our own opinions and we have our own responsibility for seeking truth. And so I have a lot of respect for him, for what he was doing, for his courage. I feel for his wife and his two children that he left behind. I know you guys have been sitting there, many of you, in silence for already 5 or 10 minutes waiting for the stream to start. But I would like to just pause for a moment of silence here to respect him and and in honor of his memory. And if you're a praying person, please take this moment to pray for the repose of his soul and for his family and for their well-being. So, as you guys all know, or many of you who already know me know that I am Catholic, and you will hear that come out through, and I'll explain more about kind of the heart and soul behind this podcast, um, which is not an explicitly Catholic podcast. It's more philosophy focused, but with the desire for truth. But for all of the non-Catholic Christians out there, most of us probably um, have the most of us have scripture as a respected word, and we can call God Father whether or not whatever our individual beliefs might be. So, just as one last thing, I want to ask you to join me in the Our Father for the repose of his soul again. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. So that was how our Lord taught us to pray. So there we go. Yeah. So a couple things, just a little housekeeping first. Most of you are here from Twitter. There's a couple of you guys here from my YouTube, and I see one of the comments already. Don't pass one, Doctor. Don't pass. This Jonas Stormrider's channel. I still play craps, but I used to have a crap strategy. So if you guys are interested there, I've got some interesting crap strategy. It's all about the numbers and all about the math. But to not get away from what we're here for, the gentlemen over at the Phone Booth podcast have graciously invited me and given me a platform and the tools to have my own podcast, something that I have been thinking about for a long time. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this and about where we're going with this podcast and why. So, Philosopher King. Why Philosopher King? Is it because Jonah's a Philosopher King? Absolutely not, right? So I want to clear that up right away because it can sound perhaps pretentious, but it's actually, there's an old medieval scholastic principle, right? All the old medieval philosophers. The 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 idea is the first in intention is last in execution, which means like if you're going to go to the grocery store, you know that your intention is to go to the grocery store, but you got to turn left out of your driveway and then right at the Starbucks and so on and so forth, right? And so finally, when you arrive, that's last in execution. Similarly, if you're going to your mom's house, you might go right out of your driveway. Similar idea. Depending on where you're headed and where you're going, it dictates how you get there and what steps you discern or figure out on what the best path to get there is. So With that in mind, philosopher king was Plato's idea of the of or his he that was what he called the ideal ruler, the ideal. So in our context, we don't have kings and lords as much anymore, at least not in our culture. And so, how, as a man, am I to be the best man I can be and take responsibility over my little kingdom, whether it's just my own life as a bachelor and my home, um, or whether you have a small family or a large one or a business you run, whatever the case may be, whatever the size of your kingdom as a man, we should all strive to be philosopher kings over that little kingdom that we've been given, right? So what is a philosopher king, right? Well, so as kings, we need to have our the different realms of our kingdom in order. The three primary ones are where you hear all of the self-help folks always talking about, right? Health, wealth, and relationships. That's really the core, right? So you got to take care of your body. You've got to take care of your finances to provide for the realm, and then everybody who you interact with. And there's obviously a scale of closeness within those relationships, right? So health, wealth, and relationships we can consider as the core realms within our kingdom. And again, that's going to vary in size from person to person. But what's interesting is this modifier that Plato added to the beginning, philosopher. Why is it a philosopher king? Well, because it's not enough to be a king and have control, because anyone can domineer and control, but who are you controlling for? And what is the purpose? Is it for our own glory and for our own power and for our own feels to make ourselves feel important, feel excellent, feel X, Y, or Z, whatever our fix might be? No, because then you become a dictator, right? So, how do you become a good king, a good steward over the things that are in your control, that are in your kingdom, in the three different realms of your kingdom? That's where philosopher comes in. What is the root of the word philosopher? It's the lover of truth, the pursuer of truth. So, as men, it's our duty, it's our God given duty, not only to bring ourselves to the highest truth and the highest good and the highest beauty, but also to lead all of those in our care. So it's funny. A lot of times, the patriarchy, the evil patriarchy, is so maligned these days. When truly what it ought to have been, and obviously there's corruption and everything like that, and men have fallen short throughout time. But what it's ultimately supposed to be is that ruler, the patriarchy, rules those under him and governs those under him for their own good, not for his, right? So that's what's really important, is to understand. But in order to do that, we have to have an understanding of the highest good. We have to have an understanding of the true, the good, and the beautiful. We have to have a philosophical, truth-based understanding of where we're leading these people. We have to know the destination in order to get our people there, get the people that we are responsible for, even if it's for right now just little old me, right? um, so that's something important to remember, that it's not ruling for rule. The patriarchy isn't built around ruling for ourselves, and that's the basis of chivalry. That's the basis of all of the old traditions, right? And if you think about it, the Dark Ages, that were the most patriarchy dominated in history, you could argue. Um, there was this structure that, although they're called falsely the Dark Ages, that produced the most incredible works of art, both architecturally and musically, and all arts of all different kinds, right? So there was something there. There was something of value, something of truth, something of beauty there that inspired that kind of production from the people that lived under good kings, good lords, good in the feudal system, good rulers, good fathers who looked out for and fought for the people under their care. And the decisions that they made for their kingdom were not for their own sake, but for the sake of those things under their responsibility and under their care. So obviously, as a man who may not have a family, or a man who may have varying responsibilities, it's going to change a lot, right? Because if you don't have a wife and children, then your choice as to what's good may focus more on what's healthy or whatever else. So, whereas then when you have relationships that are living with you at home that you're more fully responsible for, those decisions become very different, right? Okay. Well, so who is this Jonah guy, and who is he to talk to us about Philosopher King and this destination that we're striving for, right? Well, I have an interesting background and an interesting history, which I'll share a little bit with you. But I too am on this journey with that as my destination, the philosopher kingship as my destination. So as you see moving forward, you'll see each week we'll have a different guest and we'll be wrestling. In scripture says iron sharpens iron. Well, that's the idea of men who are seeking truth with different frames of reference, different opinions, striving with each other in a way that's fruitful, where there's a clash. And in that clash, the iron sharpens iron, and we both come away learning something or being a little sharper or growing in some way, shape, or form, right? So that's the goal of this, the main Wednesday night 7. We're going to be live every evening at 7 o'clock. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And there's going to be a new guest each week where we're going to just wrestle with ideas. We're going to challenge each other. And I'm not going to be alone in walking with you on this path to be the best man that we can be for the people in our world, in our responsibility, in our kingdom. But I'm going to bring in a lot of other men who have valuable things to contribute to our each of our individual kingdoms. By clashing and wrestling with other kings, or we can all strive to be the better kings ourselves, right? So I'm really excited about that. Watch the Twitter, watch the phone booth podcast.substack.com, because you'll see these episodes posted up. So if you miss anything, you can always come back and watch. If you can't see the episode live on Wednesday for whatever reason, it will be posted up there immediately afterwards, and you'll be able to catch it anytime after that. You can subscribe for free, and there's also a whole bunch of other podcasts that the gentleman and I at the phone booth podcast put out. Right. So there's just a lot of really good content, a lot of challenging content, a lot of stuff that's off the beaten path, a lot of stuff that you don't hear from the mainstream, a lot of challenging ideas that are, some of them are really out of the box. Many of them we don't agree on. The four of us who go live every Saturday night, for example, we don't agree. But I do encourage you guys to not only subscribe to Phone Booth Substack, phone booth podcast.substack.com, subscribe free, because then you'll get updates from me as well. I'll also be posting on my Twitter as to let you know who's going to be the guest coming up. And so you can see who's wrestling with what idea coming up. So it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some challenging ideas. So a little bit about my background, because who I am, I'm very transparent. I'm very authentic. That's part of why I wanted to go live. There's so much AI garbage right now. There's so much, it's hard to even tell who's real, what's a real video recording of whether it's a politician or your favorite podcaster. So I've seen podcasters by guys, and it's actually their AI clone. And there's an authenticity that's missing. So being very authentic, coming through in my speech, coming through in my opinions, coming through in my heart and my perspective, and the sources I quote, the things that I referred to, you're going to hear and see that I'm a very traditional Catholic. I have no problem with you disagreeing with me. I'm not asking you to watch the show to become Catholic. There's no ulterior motives. I think if we all seek out and search out the truth together, we'll all get there. So my background and why the unique perspective, somewhat unique perspective that I bring, is when I was 19, it was inspired by 9/11. When my brother and I were sitting there watching 9/11 happen, and we both looked at each other and were like, holy smokes, there's real evil in this world. What are we going to do about it? He went to go fight in the military and was deployed overseas. I entered the monastery. So I wasn't 19 when 2001 hit. I was a little younger than that. But eventually at 19, as early as I could, I entered the monastery. I entered a monastery that not only had vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and the habit that I wore 24/7, right? Um, I also had a vow of silence. So, for the most part, except for necessary speech, my time for 6 years was spent chanting in God's praises in church, old school Gregorian chant from the Middle Ages, really cool stuff. I'll share some of that with you guys over time. But then also, most of that time was spent in prayer and study. What did I study? This is what's interesting. Well, before I get to what I studied, as I got closer and closer to my final forever vows, which is like, this is it. I'm locked in. It's like marriage vows, right? It's forever. You take temporary vows several times just to kind of, because the lifestyle is very intense, the process of discernment and figuring out what exactly, whether or not it's for you long term, is more protracted because they're like, you have time. You have time. So for me, as I got closer to forever vows, as I entered the fifth and then the sixth year, I had more and more strongly rise up in me this desire to have my own family and my own children, my own little kingdom, if you will, right? So that for me was very compelling, and it got to the point where I discerned that it was time for me to step back and pursue another life out of that role. So that being said, that was such a unique period in my life that I wouldn't give away or change for anything else. It was incredibly fruitful, and I still think back with nostalgia to those days and those years. So, what is interesting and what did a lot to form my mind in terms of Philosopher King, in terms of my whole worldview. Now, keep in mind when I entered, to give an idea, people were still AOL instant messaging as their online communication, right? So very, very different than what we have today. And I remember when I came out of the monastery and I was talking to a friend of mine and I asked him a question about how to do something or whatever. And he's like, just YouTube it. Now this was in, just to give you context, this was in 2008 when I left the monastery. 2010. I ended up staying out in Rome for another 4 years doing voluntary work at different non-for-profits. But I came out of the monastery in 2010 and 2010, and a buddy of mine was saying, "Hey," I was asking him, how to do something, and he's like, "Just look it up on YouTube." I was like, "What's YouTube?" So in 2010, I was so clueless. I had no idea what YouTube is. And here, 15 years later, here I am live streaming a podcast to you. So miracles can happen. So, but anyhow, so that's been a journey. But what's interesting too is, okay, so one of this monastery that I was in was very particular. They were very old school in their education. So it was very rigorous, very philosophy focused, Aristotelian philosophy focused. So I went through most of the works of Aristotle, very rigorous, whole classes for whole semesters on a single work of Aristotle as we went through all of his major works. And then as we shifted later on, we shifted into theology. The focus was St. Thomas Aquinas, and especially his Summa Theologica, but so many other things. But what struck me throughout, and this is what I'll share with you over time, and you guys will start to kind of understand why my perspective is what it is that there's an incredible and uncanny continuity, because you think that kind of like faith and reason are somewhat opposed most of the time. At least we in our modern thought, this is kind of how it feels a lot, right? Where people of the faith, of one faith or another, or one creed or another, tend to kind of believe things that are nonsensical. And hey, how do you justify that? That doesn't make sense, right? So for me, one thing that was really impressive to me is the continuity in thought, idea, and argument from Aristotelian philosophy smoothly right into especially Thomistic theology. I would say all of Catholic theology. That would be my asterisk, if you will. But the continuity has always been really impressive to me, and so that's what I'll bring to the table in different times. I really love to talk departing from Aristotle and using Aristotle as a base, because whether you're Buddhist or atheist or agnostic or Protestant or Muslim, anything, we all have bodies. We all have five senses. We all have the same reason, intellect, and will, emotions, and faculties of our souls and of our bodies, right? So we all have the same tools that we're working with. And what I find beautiful about Aristotelian philosophy is how the tools that we have are being used to uncover and unfold and peel back different truths that are accessible and to deduce what is true and what isn't true. And Aristotle's, I always joke, I'm an okay theologian. I'm a pretty good philosopher, but I'm a damn good logician. So, um, so for me, the most important thing of all that Aristotle taught was what he called the organon, which was the box of tools. That was the art of, so he called it the art of reasoning well. That's what he called logic. So what's beautiful is when you really start to pull back, it doesn't matter if you're talking about white lab coats giving a direction that don't make sense about Sniffles 19 and all kinds of other things, right? Whatever even if I'm not a scientist, I can say, there's a logical issue in your argument. It doesn't follow, right? Or different, we could branch off into other topics as examples, but when you start to see that a lot of current popular scientific beliefs are more grounded on the philosophy or the theology of there not being a God or a creator, and they're actually logical fallacies most of the time, excuse me, then it starts to give you a different perspective. And then you don't have to shy away from an argument or a discussion about something because you don't have the appropriate degree. You can actually engage with an argument that you don't know much about because the logic can help guide you in your thought process in discerning what might be true and what doesn't follow, what argument is strong and what argument is weak. And even if it still may take a while for you to get to that truth and to figure out what is true, it's still super important and it's still super useful. Without a degree, without a piece of paper saying that you have the authority to speak on something, you can confidently say, that doesn't follow. Templar, thanks for reposting the stream, brother. Templar will actually be, teaser trailer, the first guest next week. So stay tuned for more details. But next Wednesday, Templar will be going live with us next week. So, but okay, so Monk come out into the real world with a background in philosophy and theology. There was some rough personal stuff that happened to me after that. There was a lot of stuff which I'll share with you guys over time, but there was a huge betrayal in my life by the people closest to me who were Catholic. So it drove me away because I looked, and I think this resonates with a lot of people today. You look at the hypocrisy and the dirtiness and the malice and the inconsistencies and the just putridity of a lot of people who claim to be Christian or claim to be Catholic, and it's a huge turnoff. I used to refer, for this brief period of time while I was away, also because of some of the things I witnessed. I won't dox anybody or myself, but there was, just to give you an idea, a parish priest that I found myself in after leaving the monastery was involved in some sexual abuse scandals, and I played a supporting role to a number of persons who were affected and assisted them in getting justice. This priest was removed from his position, and as a result, the associate pastor and a bunch of the other people in that church community all dogpiled me, slandered me, made up all these crazy things about me, and I was completely exiled from the entire church community, one that I had grown to love. So for me, I was like, oh yeah, well, you guys too, right? I don't want anything to do with this Catholic Church anymore. The reason I'm telling you this, because it's very important to understand, because what ended up happening is I ended up searching. I ended up looking at a whole bunch of different creeds, beliefs, points of view, worldviews, etc. And it took me a while. It took me a number of years, but eventually it was actually two things: that consistency I told you about between Aristotle and the theology the Aristotelian philosophy, excuse me, and Thomistic theology. That continuity got me thinking again. It's really hard to argue with this stuff, right? But a big thing for me was my fiance at the time. We were in New Orleans for Halloween, and it just struck me. We were there. It just struck me that every costume that was mocking a religion of any kind was mocking the church that I had left, was mocking Jesus crucified, the Blessed Virgin, or the Pope, or the Eucharist, whatever, right? All these Catholic, very Catholic beliefs were all being mocked. I didn't see other religions being mocked. That caused me pause. That made me think, okay, maybe I need to revisit this. That's not an easy thing to do. I rebelled and walked away and threw it all off like a dirty towel, so to speak. That was kind of a humbling moment for me. Like, okay, well, let me come back and revisit. Let me think through and wrestle through with some of these ideas. So, the perspective that I come to you guys with, and like I said earlier, at no point will this will is the point of this, in no way is the point of this Philosopher King podcast to shove Catholicism down anybody's throats or argue with anybody, convince them what the truth is, right? But as I said in the beginning, we're all kings, whether it's of our own little house or of the family or company that we control. And it's our job to be philosophers and to arm ourselves with wisdom as much as we can to guide those in our care towards their greatest good, right? So that's my perspective as a Catholic. So I come at it from a Catholic lens, right? And other people are going to come at it from a different perspective. But again, iron sharpens iron. So I just want to be really clear of those two things. One is that this is not something, I was not born Catholic. My family converted. Then I had the whole monk thing. I left, had my own journey, my own little rebellion, and I came back because I was compelled to by the truth that I discovered. And that was extra hard because I came face to face with the abuse scandals, and that touched me personally. No priest touched me personally, thank goodness. But that whole scandal touched my life personally. So I just ask for your understanding, and that I'm going to be very transparent. My point of view on this world and on the issues that we're facing as men in this world is a Catholic point of view. You're going to get that from me because I'm going to be transparent about it. That being said, a lot of the guests that you'll see on here do not share the same belief as me, and I love that because we will wrestle with each other over ideas, and iron will sharpen iron. So, just wanted to lay that all out there. Why now? Goodness gracious. I could never have predicted, as we talked about earlier and had that moment of silence. I've been planning this podcast for months, years, even more deliberately months. And then, God bless them, Ted and the guys were like, Jonah, you said Philosopher King was coming out. When's it coming out? I've wanted to for a long time, dragging my feet to pull the trigger. So I appreciate all you guys for being here, being here with me. It means a lot to me. Like, this is something that's been on my heart for a long time. Why? Well, in this world today, we've completely lost our bearings. You can't sit on a subway, as we saw last week, in certain parts of the world without being slaughtered. Europe is in complete, the entire Western civilization that was built on Greco-Roman culture, that is filled, as I mentioned earlier, has that the Middle Ages and antiquity also produced some of the most beautiful art and artwork that people from all around the world still go to see. But that Western civilization that produced those wonders, the moral fabric is unraveling at a speed that's frightening. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? This is my one little effort of mine to try to help in some way. I want to encourage conversation where we wrestle with each other and seek the truth and seek to better ourselves, but not just looking at our own selfishly at our own good, but looking at those in our sphere of influence, no matter how big or small. I have a small sphere of influence right now, and that's okay. But as we continue to love the truth and seek the truth, I believe our sphere of influence will grow. So I ask you to help me, like, retweet, subscribe, etc., and follow, because let's help each other out. And if you feel like you have a message to say and you would like to be a future guest on this podcast, DM me, please. I would love to wrestle with you in the field of ideas and work out with you and talk about some of the issues that are facing us as a culture and as a society right now. So whether it's getting on a bus or now we have a very peaceful political activist in the person of Charlie Kirk, who, God rest his soul, who was assassinated today. His whole campaign. Now, I didn't agree with some of his stances on things. Like, I feel like he came down on the wrong side in the Israel-Palestine thing. Fine. But he was a peaceful man who encouraged dialogue. He went to the future leaders of this generation at the universities where indoctrination by those who hate our culture is the strongest. And he argued for and respectfully dialogued with them and challenged them to think, challenged them to discern and ask the questions that they weren't being taught to ask in communist indoctrinated universities, right? So what he did for the future generations of leaders in our country by going to all these universities, we'll only know in down the road in history, right? But it was massive. It was massive, and massive in a way that inspired people to be more thoughtful and more intelligent strivers for culture and to preserve the American way of life, which one look at Europe, that's the direction we're going. This last week, the French government is collapsing. Riots overflowing. And that's only going to spread to the rest of Europe because they've completely lost their bearings. One of the big venoms of this of our day is modernism, where people have the belief deeply ingrained now that we can't know anything for certain. So engaging in like how if you don't believe that you can know anything for certain, then what's the point of intellectual dialogue? What is the point of any of it, right? So it's tough. It really intellectually neuters an entire people. So this modernism is one of the things that's part of why I love Aristotle so much, and in the tradition of Plato and Socrates, because Socrates taught us how to ask questions. Plato taught us something that there's something bigger outside of us. And Aristotle showed us how to recognize those transcending realities in the things around us and in our lives, and how to interact with them in the healthiest, most virtuous, most profitable, beneficial ways possible. So to me, from my little point of view, little Jonah, my understanding of one of the main issues of this world is a lack of grounding in truth and knowledge. And the antidote, the real, I can't say that word on YouTube, right? The real jab that will cure the pandemic of intellectual vapidity is truth. And I think the strongest argument for truth, because it's based solely on senses, is that ancient Greek Aristotelian tradition. Okay, so moving forward, there's going to be guests. As I mentioned already, Templar, who's with us here, is the first one. You guys might remember from a phone booth podcast down the road a couple months ago, I think it was Socrates. Super intelligent guy, wonderful mind, and very discerning and analytical, a joy to talk to. So he's going to be a guest as well the following week, most likely. And then we've got some other guests, which I'll announce as we get down the road. But I'm really excited to set off on this journey with you guys. In addition to this Wednesday evening conversation. Okay, so as you can imagine, I'm a little bit of a geek, a little bit of a nerd. Having come from the monastery, I'm all about books and old libraries, hence the little antique library behind me, right? Okay, so back in one of the cities I used to live back in the day, there were all these different convents and churches closing and everything like that, and libraries. They were throwing out or selling at like a quarter for a copy these old manuscripts, these old books. So I have some really old books, some really new books, but a lot of these books you can't even find anymore. Or if you can find them, they're on eBay for like $200-300. So I'm going to pull some of those out. It's not going to be a Wednesday night thing. I think what the format is going to be, and I'd love to, if if you guys have some feedback. But I think what I'm going to do is read just a chapter and have it release every day, recording. That won't be live, but then a chapter with a little commentary afterwards. Like we might go through some of the works of Aristotle. We might go through some St. Thomas. We might go through some commentaries or some philosophical reflections on modernism and why it's a problem and what some of the solutions are. A whole variety of things. One of my favorite books are one of my favorite books is this book by this French guy called Sertillange was his last name, right? But it's called The Intellectual Life. Now it has Catholic undertones too, not surprising. Hi. But its majority of it is how to have a healthy intellectual life and a vigorously living intellectual life and how to maintain and nurture that growth. It's a fascinating book. He has everything from like little tips on, like make sure you keep a pad of paper next to your bed, because then if you wake up with an idea, sometimes by the time you wake up in the morning, or again, it'll be gone. But if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can scribble it down and then come back to it later. So just little practical things like that. Some really lofty ideas as well. So I think that's a really fun one. But to this end, we'll have on the podcast people who will wrestle with ideas of health, and how to like different biohacking things and fun things like that, about wealth and investment or strategies for different things like that. Relationships. One of my favorite things to talk about is personality type analysis. So and how that affects the life of virtue and how we can be better persons, better men, better partners to our significant other by understanding how we operate different as men or women and how our personality type may color that masculine or feminine nature differently, right? And anyway, so there's going to be a lot of really fun topics over the course of this podcast. But I'm excited. I so appreciate all of you guys tuning in. I've got so many great ideas, and I'm excited to take you guys along that journey with me. So, as a reminder, Philosopher King we will be live every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. There will be little book readings coming out, and then there will also be kind of commentary after the books, like I said. But the main bulk of it is going to be this Wednesday evening conversations, right? So in order to always to catch up on something you've missed, in order to see what the other guys, I mean, you guys know the Phone Booth podcast comes out every Monday night. There's a watch party as well. So the guys and I will talk about the episode after the episode there. There's also Dualistic podcast. And there's the Here's the Thing podcast, which comes out at 6 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. So for all of this good stuff, Philosopher King is just one of many here. Please check out and subscribe to phoneboothpodcast.substack.com. Follow me on Twitter at Jonah Stormrider. I'm excited to be on this journey with you guys. I appreciate your guys' time this evening. Um, I appreciate the comments in the chat here. Um, yes, and don't pass one. I do have to talk to Charlie. Charlie is one of the guys that I actually met. He was one of the guys. He actually got me down to where I live now. And so I came to help him with the charity. But I met him and we started playing craps together and everything like that. So he's a really solid dude. Very community oriented. Has a non for profit for kids that he started. Really stellar guy. Templar, I appreciate you showing up here, chilling with me. I appreciate your encouragement as well. Haywood, always a fun, always a blast. Here's another thing, and one of the things that Haywood and I are having a lot of fun with. We both love to do a little bit of sports betting here and there, and so on the weekends now, on Saturday after the main live podcast or live stream with the guys at at Phone Booth Podcast, Haywood and I go live. It's going to be at like 11:30 or midnight. We'll let you know Eastern time, 11:30 or midnight, and we're going to talk about the upcoming NFL games, and different parlays or bets and different games that we think are solid. So there's a whole gambit, as you can tell. If I'm talking about gambling too, I'm not like one of those psychotically rigid Catholics who everything is outlawed and everything. I mean, our Lord, His first miracle was to turn water to wine. So so I'm right there with you on that one as well. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The conversation is going to be great, and there you go. So welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Let's, instead of looking around, and I'll end with this thought. Instead of looking around at the world around us, at Western Europe, which is crumbling right now, which has happened before, and it's returned, it's risen, it's overcome the invaders before. Instead of looking at the state of our country, which has been very disheartening over the last several years, especially, instead of playing the victim, instead of saying, "Oh, woe is me, what can we do? What are we going to do? It's all too far gone. Move out, find another place." No, no, no. What can we do to change? What can I do to change this culture? How can I make a difference, even if it's just in my little sphere of influence? Talking about first in intention and last in execution, like we mentioned earlier. If you know where you're going, then all the path all the twists and turns that you come to, they'll make themselves clear in due time. One of my favorite analogies is when you're driving in the fog, what do? You don't turn your brights on, try to see too far. You're going to blind yourself. You put on your low beams. So you dim the lights of your mind in the sense that you don't try to see beyond what you can actually understand and see, but you literally just drive to the edge of the fog. So you humble your heart and your mind, drive to the edge of the fog that you can see and stay between the lines. Once you get to the edge of the fog, there'll be another step available for you to see. And so all we have to do is calm our hearts and minds and drive to the edge of the fog. What can we see? What can be done? What positive influence can I have in the world today? Chivalry's not dead. The world needs good men to bring chivalry and strong, benevolent male leadership back into this world. It's a ship without a rudder unless strong men stand up to guide their families and the people in their care. The non-chivalrous man says, "Oh, chivalry's dead." The coward says, "Chivalry's dead. Every time I open a door, if the woman gets mad. Open it anyways. Guaranteed in a small corner of her heart somewhere she likes it, right? But open it anyways. Do what you know is right, and the world will start to change." Tune in with me every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., and you and I together will drive to the edge of the fog. We may not be able to see what's 2, 3, 4 months down the road, let alone 5 or 10 years. But what we can do together as brothers is drive to the edge of the fog together and stay between the lines of reason and good, solid morals and thinking. And let's get this let's get Western civilization back on the right track. But let's start with our own hearts and minds. Let's start with our own families and our own little kingdoms and seek to grow those kingdoms as we serve them and bring them back to the kind of country, to the kind of culture that produces the wonders like the Pietà, the wonders like Chartres Cathedral or St. Peter's, the wonders like the Mona Lisa. Let's do it. Join me every Wednesday night. Don't miss an episode. Don't miss a live stream. Subscribe to phoneboothpodcast.substack.com. I will see you there, and I will see you next week with Templar at 7 p.m. live. God bless you guys.